In this test, each shooter will have 30 seconds to claim as many clays as possible at 30 yards, in order to find the most potentially destructive weapon on the crowded battlefield.
Now, what you might not have caught on camera is that I grabbed a chunk of my own beard trying to get back into position, and both of my elbows are extremely uncomfortable.
I'm having to reach so far forward and dig my elbows at such a weird, like obtuse angle that your shoulders are uncomfortable, under my arms is uncomfortable. I don't really feel like I've got some good placement on this one.
There's just no way to mount this thing.
Just a simple bipod would make such a world of a difference on this one.
Really would benefit from a bipod.
It doesn't have a bipod. I'm not gonna try and fire it in full auto because I know I'm gonna go climbing way up over the clays.
And I'm kind of counting on the recoil. I'm aiming low and then letting the gun creep up the target a little bit, although still not climbing as bad as I thought it would.
To my way of thinking, this is an automatic rifle, and I'm gonna shoot it like an automatic rifle.
I imagine you would plan your position better ahead of time, have a sandbag up front, that'd make a big difference on this gun.
I'm having to do so much focus on this for just keeping it up and straight and my sights lined up that it's definitely not simple.
It's got great sights, and they're kind of wasted in non-supported fire, so on full auto.
Easier reloading than a lot of the other stuff we played with, even though I managed to kind of mess it up.
I was hoping to do a little bit better than I think I actually did. And in fact, I goofed when I set the selector at the very beginning. I thought I had it on semi. I actually had it on full.
I don't think I did very well with this one at all. I can see a few broken clays.
I'm confident I did better this way than I would have in full auto, and I think that's the best way to use this particular gun.
All right, folks, let's talk field repair, because it's been a long day on range and we don't always have time to resolve issues. And we've got a little too much slop in this rear pin. So if I pull this trigger, I got nothing unless there's some yoke on this gun. Now, I have nature's most perfect invention, the zip tie. Actually, I got two of them linked together. So let's see how probably the most ridiculous World War I gunsmithing ever could go. Oh, let me take my hand off now. I think we're gonna try this out. Hopefully I don't get poked in the eye. the yoke done struck again, and I have no way of making sure.
All right, well, I at least got something, so I've saved my reputation a little bit.
Dang, I didn't get to a second mag, and I had to tighten my zip tie. I feel like this isn't standard issue.
The Chauchat is an incredibly difficult gun to shoot.
The recoil is stupendously uncomfortable. This has the same sort of pattern as not necessarily an Auto 5 shotgun, but actually the Winchester 1911 Widowmaker.
It just bounces around on you.
It's shaking so violently, I still can't really track what I'm doing downrange, so I can't walk it in like I did the Lewis gun.
It doesn't even really seat very well. These legs, this bipod is like really flimsy and weird in that both of them are able to act independently, so even seating it in the mud is quite difficult.
This is not an easy gun to actually aim at a point target. I still have a very hard time getting a sight picture.
I have to raise this gun up so high, and I just am not able to get lined up over that sight. I'm still having to do a weird alignment on this one.
You saw I actually ended up going back here to the rear cap, which is what you're not supposed to do. I did that deliberately, and the reason you're not supposed to do it is because then the edge of this collar will come back and kick you in the cheek. But I wanted to, back here, I can actually get my eye down lower and get a sight picture.
It doesn't feel like it really is one that's good for total damage from this distance.
I tried a variety of different techniques. I tried walking my fire in, and I think I started very high, so I kept lowering it, and it took a surprising amount of time until I started seeing dirt kicked up close.
I certainly did show Ian, who thought I wouldn't get a single clay, and I see at least one broken one down there.
At some point, I managed to get at least one clay, but I think it was only one, maybe two.
Looks like I may have hit one, but, oh, I did hit one. Yes.
I believe in myself.
The Chauchat is not a weapon of precision, it is a weapon of élan.
I switched strategies almost immediately because there's no hope for the, hey, I see a broken clay.
Blanket the area, even if I can't see where I'm hitting, try to adjust fire to cover where I think I'm gonna be hitting.
Nope, I don't think I got a single one of those. I was trying to walk her in. Either I was hitting dirt, hitting too high.
The key to properly utilizing a Chauchat is aggressiveness, attack, and basically just violence.
I cannot see down these sights while the gun is in motion for a lot of the guns. For this gun, I can't see down the sights when the gun isn't in motion.
A lot of burst, a lot of full auto fire, I can't get a sight picture anyway, so I'm not gonna try and take a careful one.
Honestly, this one, it feels like it's even worse than the 8mm. It sits so high.
I mean, just trying to get up to where they present. I'm gonna line this up while I got the camera for a second. That's how, I mean, I'm all the way up. I only have so much arm, and I'm already a tall guy.
It sits too tall, the bipod's weak. Overall, it's just not the best to do this kind of total destruction demonstration with. It really doesn't do any destruction at this distance.
This is a weapon for diving into a trench and clearing a trench with fully automatic fire. In this configuration, from the bipod aiming at relatively small static targets, it's not at its best. Ah, so close.
Well, shoot.
Oh.
All right, this is fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Like I expected, the Lewis gun, she does drill a hole.
You can just watch where you're hitting even in this wet, muddy weather.
The sight's still dang accurate. It's easy to read down.
I'm going to tell Ian exactly what I just learned, which is don't bother with burst.
I am able to actually watch impacts downrange over the sights and make adjustments in real time.
Once I got even one lick of motion downrange, I could walk her right in.
The way that the action runs, the weight of the gun, the aperture sights, the really nice trigger, this all goes together to make a magnificent firearm.
She's so mild and easy on recoil, so linear on recoil. I just drew it. I mean, I drew it like MS Paint.
She swivels pretty well. I think she would have done fine. I think I just need to get a little bit faster on my reloads, though.
Even when I got malfunctions, they were easy to clear. They were pretty quick to clear.
She definitely performed what I thought she would do. It sucks we just don't have any more rounds to use on her. Otherwise, I feel like she would have the most destructive power.
I think I'm going to end up doing substantially better with the Lewis than with any of the other guns, despite the fact that I cleared like 5 malfunctions during my 30-second stint.
Beautiful system for this sort of use.
I was that close to getting off rounds from a second drum after a reload. I really like this thing. That was difficult.
This is a difficult one to realistically try to sweep the line with.
Now, I took my time only because I saw the other two, so I had an advantage there.
Problem is that lining up that sight and actually hitting the targets, I was not doing so hot on that one. I don't think I nailed a single one with that. I think I was spraying all around the hay.
I'm not sure exactly where it was shooting, and so I did some kind of wandering around trying to find exactly where I was hitting.
I aimed just above each bale and managed to make some contact.
I know I got a couple of hits, but it was a matter of like try and find a vaguely correct position and then drop a burst.
I'm kind of curious to see how the other guys will do, but I tried to take it slow, tried to keep it concise bursts to try to see if I could possibly land it on there.
Still looks like there's a lot of spread on this gun.
We saw some of this in the 100-yard test. This gun has kind of a lot of dispersion, even at a relatively shorter range like this.
It's got a good swivel point on it, so yes, you're able to sweep it pretty swiftly.
By the time I got this yoke pushed forward, I'm rocking off the rear leg of the tripod. Now, it's just so unstable. This is just the wackiest way to do this.
I still just didn't have any luck today with that, unfortunately.
Helps to actually switch it.
Well, that's not too shabby.
Problem is that it's so difficult to tell where it's hitting.
I think when we review these targets as I'm looking, I'm bullseyeing the first shots on the burst.
It's really kind of difficult to shoot good bursts with it.
I did, however, choose to do it this way because, well, we already saw it used as a semi-automatic rifle, and I really wanted to try burst.
I tried to do a little bit of burst fire. I tried to do some single shots to see where I was where I was lining up, but I couldn't get a grasp of exactly where I was shooting.
It's a light machine gun. However, with this actual World War I model, they really actually kind of had it more in the guise of an automatic rifle, specifically because of the trigger.
Because it's such a long draw on that trigger before you get to that second round, I'm gonna have to agree with Ian. This gun doesn't like doing burst.
If you have to under stress and you just clamp down on the trigger, great, that'll work. But if I want to actually hit discrete targets, this gun is really designed to have you do that in semi-auto.
It feels like automatic would have to be reserved for targets almost closer than these, and definitely man-sized.
So for this one, I was just having a hard time finding exactly what I was hitting. I mean, it looks like I may have gotten, no, I don't even know if I got a single clay with that.
There was some times there, it's got a very small V-notch sight, and the periods when I started missing, I realized were periods when I was letting the front sight drift high and like focusing on the front sight to the detriment of the V-notch.
This bipod has this front sight so high, and then keeping the rear sight in line with it's also just so difficult.
I think if there had been a way to put an aperture sight on this, like the Lewis has, it would have been really quite exceptional.
I did more damage with this gun than a lot of the others, though. I will say that, as much as I might say it's not great.
I did fairly well with it.
It's still better than a lot of what we've seen. So I have a lot of love for the Madsen. So I was being a baby about it. I should have just held the trigger down. And if this thing was running a little bit better, I could have.
She did lock up on me on that one, so goodness knows how many I got. Oh, I got a few of them.
I had a bunch of malfunctions there, not entirely sure why. We'll have to check into that.
I'm not doing this gun a fair representation because I'm not just powering through it. Once you saw me pull the trigger and hold and just watch the dirt, I started hitting.
This was one of the guns that I think has the potential to do a lot more damage to these clays than, well, most of them.
I've got a nice easy sweep, so I'm able to move laterally very, very smoothly.
This thing has a battle sight zero of 400 meters, so that's going to require some significant offset and adjustment.
You're able to get a good sight picture on her, like, very well from this distance.
Sights are okay, but the gun just bounces around.
Only issue really for staying on target is just the bounciness on that recoil.
That recoil, just bouncing the entire time. So I recommend don't even bother with the sights.
Because of this balance issue, it doesn't matter how heavy the gun is because they've so nicely balanced it right in the middle. It's actually kind of really aggravating.
All right, time for another review, and I think what a lot of people are probably noticing is that we were over-prepared for this test. So I've spent the last however many weeks figuring out what we could shoot, settle on straw bales. I was
calculated clays even.
Oh, I'm sitting there going, all right, we're going to need like 100. Like some of these guns might be able to do more than 100 clays, and we're trying to do it. Now, one thing that did change is I was expecting to clump them really tightly together and just see a spread. But then you had the idea of changing up, being able to like, oh no, we need to show seek and find a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
And so...
And I think that was a great way to demonstrate that because that definitely, I think, shows in these results too.
Well, some of these guns, you cannot twist them as easily. But one thing that, let's pay attention to something very clearly. Even with a machine gun, lone man volume of fire is still not enough to overcome the fact that most of the universe is made up of space.
Yes.
I mean, really, like we're sending an 8mm-ish bullet down range. It has to make contact with, a 3-inch clay or whatever. 90% of what we have in front of us, even when we're focused down on something, is still space. And any sort of, these are not sniper rifles, they're machine guns. So we're hucking ammo at these targets. Now, granted, we're much closer, but try imagining, everybody thinks about mowing people down 100 yards with these things. Yeah, you're mostly hitting air.
When people say, like, there was a solid wall of men advancing, there wasn't. They were meters apart.
Right.
And when you look at that, your reaction is, that's a lot of people together That's like a solid wall of people. And I think what we have with these clay pigeons is a more accurate representation of
There's gaps.
Right. There's a lot of gaps.
Right.
So,
I mean, maybe if we'd had some sort of long clay pigeons that they're separated, they'd get a slightly, but that's only for standing man.
Yeah.
So I think this is giving us a much fairer representation of what machine guns do.
We
I'm
also did
very
want to
happy.
make sure we didn't have the targets too high because we wanted to make sure we were staying on the berm too.
Oh yeah, there's that.
and our last caveat, I think, is several of these guns we were limited by magazines available.
Right.
Like, if we're going to do this test the way we did it, we don't have time for someone to take the spare mags and reload them while we're still shooting and hand them back. And so the 30-06 Chauchat, the Madsen, I think it was primarily those two. We really had a limitation of, we only have a couple magazines to work with because these are very scarce magazines, especially to find them in good working order today. So that forced us to keep the time frame a little bit shorter than we otherwise would have done.
Also, we were a little proud of ourselves.
Yeah, we also thought we were going to do way better than we did.
Fire rate 30 seconds. We'll divide that out, and that'll just result in blah blah. Nope. Once we started firing, it was like, oh god, I'm not hitting anything.
Yeah,
The
we were
panic
like
set-
accounting for like some of these to have like 100 clays, like up to.
I had the World War I experience. I'm like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Nothing good is happening. Nothing good.
All right, so if we start at the bottom, the worst performer was exactly the one we all thought it would be.
Yes.
The 30-06 Chauchat.
And by the time we got to that range, Mark over at Anvil Gunsmithing had cleaned up the sights so that you could actually see down them even better than when we started this whole thing.
Could have, if you could get your eye in that position,
Yeah.
which you can't.
Good old
Yeah.
Bruzy.
Nice little bruisey over here.
So we had a total of 5 hits with that thing between the three of us, and not evenly distributed.
I would like to congratulate you though.
Thank you.
Yeah, whopping 4 hits on
That
that.
we were amazed.
Like, I'm happier getting 4 hits with that thing than I was
I was
with
saying
my
in
best
your-
performing
You
gun.
said no hits for any of us, and I said I'm going to get 1, and then I guess that just set you off because. So
I think the key is you get angry. You have to be angry to use the Chauchat effectively.
I wasn't really that angry. I was a little bit sleepy going on a few hours of sleep, but I wasn't that angry that day.
I did consider briefly picking up the gun when the timer went off and just running down range with it, charging and firing from the hip. But that probably wouldn't have done
no.
Moving up from that one, we have, and by the way, the reason the 30-06 Chauchat in particular is not just the sights, also the recoil's worse.
Right.
Yes.
It's just more junk.
Honestly, if the recoil weren't so bad, I feel like with that slow rate of fire, I could rely on I could just walk it in with the hit impact.
Which, in fact, is exactly what you did with the 8mm Chauchat.
Yes.
We had 3 guns, the 8mm Chauchat, the BAR, and the Hotchkiss. Were all right smack in this middle mediocre performance.
Right.
9, 9, and 8 hits, respectively. And for different reasons. The Hotchkiss bounces around and has a terrible tripod.
Which, again, nicely done. You managed to come out ahead with that one. Like 5 of the hits were yours.
There are a few guns that don't want to be shot as much as that Hotchkiss.
Yeah.
I mean, it just. I don't know how to describe it better than that. Like, it just doesn't want you behind it.
The best thing you could do to improve the Hotchkiss is to take that crow's foot tripod and replace it with a tank.
Yeah.
You
Just
bolt
a
that
solid
thing into a
mounted.
tank.
By
and
the
then
way,
it'll
they
work.
did have the cavalry version. Another difference I should point out at this stage is that it had a regular bipod much further up at the front of the barrel. And I feel like that would have made a huge difference in stability on that gun. However, it doesn't clean up a lot of the reloading and other handling issues we had.
The BAR was a problem simply because it has no bipod at all. It's like the opposite issue. It's not a crappy one. It's just not there.
And we
It's
had
the same
several-
issue with 100 yards, basically, set up that we had previously done. Just nothing to really hold it but you.
I like
Yeah.
this one because we had several strategies.
Yes.
May kind of light and mixed fire, and you just semi-auto from the start. And
So I
then me,
tried. It would have been a little bit better if I had not accidentally dumped a burst on my first one.
That's true.
Yes, that's true.
Did you want just the fact that it just sent it, and so you think you would have had an actual hit, and then
Well, no, I thought I put the selector on semi.
yeah.
And
I'm
so
saying,
I did a nice long trigger press to get a good shot, and I
how many extra hits do you think you could have done with that?
1 or 2 more probably. Not
But
a lot.
still, that's significant
Yeah.
for what we're seeing in these sort of tests.
I don't know how perfectly the sights are zeroed. And that makes a big difference with individual semi-auto fire in that way.
Right.
The sights on the 1918 BAR are outstanding. And if they are zeroed, that thing is a deadly rifle in semi-auto.
It's essentially the same as the 1917 rifle.
Yeah, but semi-auto with 4 times the magazine capacity.
Yeah, it's. I agree. Anything over immediate danger, 30 feet, just use it as a big semi-auto.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And the 8mm Chauchat, you were saying you walked the rounds in, which didn't work great, but it got you 3 hits.
Yep.
I mean, we all actually came out even on that. That's the
Honestly,
only test we all came out even on.
This is interesting. On paper, I did very well with that gun walking the hits in. On clays, I did poorly. I can almost guarantee you, I felt confident about my clay hits with that gun. If there had been paper there, I think you would have seen something akin to a grouping.
Yeah.
But the problem is the slow rate of fire means that I don't get the burst benefit. The benefit of the burst is if I can get it into a section and hold it through the burst in a vague, like if I can keep it dispersed to here and just hose rounds in there, my hit probability goes up. I mean, we're playing a statistics game.
Right.
But because of slow rate of fire, even though it looks great on paper, I didn't statistically get all that many attempts to hit that spot. And so, not so good. If it had triple the rate of fire, I would have had triple the clays broken in that little section.
You would have had no face left.
Well, yeah, recoil
True,
too.
yeah.
I forget about the recoil there.
So then, once we get out of like the mediocre zone, we had the 3 guns that we really expected going in would be the best, but they didn't necessarily perform in the same way that we thought they would. So those are, of course, the Lewis, the Maxim, and the Madsen. And I'm going to start with the Madsen.
Okay.
I
That's
took
fair.
one look at the trigger on that thing. Not one look, but from our previous testing, I knew that the trigger on that gun is really designed to be a semi-auto gun capable of full auto in emergencies.
Right.
So that Madsen, and that differs, by the way, from the later Madsens, and there are a lot more of the late ones out there. The World War I Madsen is an extremely rare gun today. And on the later ones, they have a regular selector switch. So you've got a trigger, and it's got safe, semi, and full auto. And on this one, it's a progressive trigger. And I looked at that and I went, you know what? This is clearly trying to tell me to shoot semi-auto. I'm just going to shoot semi-auto and see how it does. And it did really quite well. I got 9 hits with it, which is the second most that I got with anything. You two both did some burst fire as well.
Yes, and for Othnius, he was able to walk his shots in. Like, he was able to get, like, a good solid burst, like, on multiple
Yeah, I believe
targets.
I went last on that gun. I
so.
don't recall. All I know is that you really struggled with the progressive trigger because you have been trained throughout the entirety of our series where we shoot a ton of vintage bolt action guns. May is hardwired to not snatch a trigger.
Oh, no, I'm a slow pull through
And
every day of the week.
The only way to get automatic fire out of that gun is to snatch the trigger or pull through and then just keep on pulling. And then it's very awkward.
Mhm.
The snatch is really the only way to get a burst out of that gun. And I tried the snatch, and I'm not a trigger snatcher either. And so I had a really difficult time keeping my sights aligned, even with all the extra mass and everything, and then just jerking a trigger. But it's the only way you can run that thing in auto. I wanted to try an auto burst to see if I could get the sort of grouping. And interestingly, as much as I'm complaining, it's still not that bad. Still 8.
No, like, you were
I think
just under Ian.
You're honestly at the worst because that you were trying to do what I was trying to do, and yet you kept not getting the burst.
I just couldn't get a hang on the trigger. Like, I wasn't able to get the shots that I wanted with it. It's unfortunate. I think I hit a good bit of hay here and there, though.
The Madsen is a gun that with some practice, you could get really good at.
Oh, yeah.
The Madsen has fewer things that make it a fundamentally bad gun than
Right.
a lot of these others. Like, you can practice a lot on the Hotchkiss, and you can get better at it, but you're still going to be facing some serious limitations from the mechanics of the gun.
And I mean, you can get really fast on the reload with that one too. I mean, if you manage to get the toe of the mag in there right, that's going to speed up this.
Or have a proper team.
Yeah, for like these total damages, again, we're all doing those reloads like on our own. Ian was able to get a few mags in here or there, but I have some, for the most part, didn't even get a mag in.
Oh, no, I didn't make it. Did I get a reload?
You managed to get one in,
I would
but
get
you
them
didn't
in,
manage
and
to
then
get
I'd never
any
get a-
rounds off.
Yeah.
So
It's worth pointing out from our reload test, basically every reload for us is going to be 10 to 15 seconds. And we have a 30-second time penalty to start with, or time period. So
Yeah.
by the time you're up and shooting, you're a couple seconds in. And then you've only got like 10 seconds to shoot the entire magazine if you want to be able to reload and get anything out of that second magazine.
If I had to redo it and keep the 30 seconds, I'd say we probably should have been eyes on and ready. And then that would have given us a chance to have a mag change and a second burst. But
yes.
Next
chance.
time we'll get some more magazines.
Yeah.
And then we can just extend the time out that way. The Maxim. You did better. I feel like our scores are the same on the Maxim. It didn't come out as well as we thought. We had a grand total of 13 hits with the Maxim compared to 19 for the Madsen.
Yeah.
Why?
Bounce.
Yeah, honestly, that bounce with that recoil. Like, I feel like no matter what, I would have 2 shots in the bay if I shot in the hail bay if I actually shot it. And then, unfortunately, like, at the moment I got out of the bale, like, it was just out of the bale. Like, it was just into the berm behind us. So, unfortunately, like, you just got to put, like, 1 or 2 bursts on it and then hope it's staying in there. Like, I think that was the issue.
We chose the arrangement of those targets based off the idea of World War One. So, low and horizontal. You're not people who just step up and walk across. That's going to be easy pickings, and we know it. So we wanted lots of little dots along the horizon for us to shoot at. And when your gun has that central pivot, and it is the teeter-totter of firearms.
You know,
And
I
it
would,
just
I would argue this would be the best one for swiveling with too, just because that bipod on there, it
Oh, yeah,
allows
moving
you for
left to
such
right was
great
easy.
travel. Like compared to the others that have all these like, I mean, shoot, the Chauchats, like they have individual legs that essentially they can move independently. Like that alone, Jesus.
Now, some people will say, by the way, on that 0815 that we should have the bipod the other way around, and it's
Doesn't
like
help.
it plays no benefit, and you don't have the advantage of the dig in for the recoil. So
Doesn't matter. And I think we see some evidence that it's not just us, that bipod was bad, in that the Germans by the 1930s, when they were reworking 0815s to keep them in service, they moved the bipods out to the front of the water jacket.
you could have clamped a bipod over the whole jacket, kind of like what you see on the Lewis gun, and I guarantee you, I could have at least 50% increased my score.
Yeah,
just from that horrible vertice that's in there.
So speaking of the Lewis, Lewis is our clear and undisputed winner of this test with
Shocking
31 hits.
Yeah.
In fact, every single one of us, including you, hit more with the Lewis than with any other gun.
It's true. Now, for me, I was the first one to shoot the Lewis, and instantly the first time I was shooting at the Hail
Bay.
Yeah, I'm just going to combine words at this point.
Okay.
The bail. I'm just going to say bail. I'm just going to use one word. When I was first aiming at the first one, I was able to basically, I could see the target, or I could see it hit my target, and then basically I just did a little tiny wiggle, like a little circle essentially, and that was when I nailed 4 clays in 1. And that's when at that point I was like, all right, I'm going to move to the next bail, and I just shifted over, made it to the next one. I managed to hit 1, but the problem was that I hit 1 and then I did my little swivel and I was like, I'm not getting any more. What the heck is going on? I was
Which means you had gone high left.
Right. I had managed to like not get it just in the right spot, unfortunately. So that's when whenever we did, by the way, get off range, like whoever shot at first or second or whatever, we tried to give little tips to each other just to kind of see. And that way it gave them also an opportunity to see if they wanted to change up what maybe they were going to start off with.
Yeah, don't forget, May went into this assuming the Lewis was going to shoot low. So she took a high hold. So May actually warned Ian and I, don't keep shooting high. I don't know what the difference is or where we're at, but...
Well, we were assuming that it would perform the same at about 45 yards for this test that it did at the 100-yard test.
Correct.
Where you did have to hold high, and at the shorter range, not quite so much.
Right.
So
unfortunately, I didn't
May
perform
buffed
as well.
our scores with her warning. We'd probably see about the same day, which is actually a testament because, you know, if that's, even if her second burst had hit as well as her first, she'd be right in there with us. So I think what we're seeing here is that the Lewis's advantage is just the right rate of fire here with the ability to pick a zone and hose that zone. The opposite was saying with like the Chauchat, where with the Chauchat, I actually, out of the 3 of us, have been able to pick a zone, but then I just sort of poke a couple holes in that area, and that's all I get. Whereas it's almost a shotgun blast with the Lewis gun. You just blah, 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 right in that spot.
So to me, it's the stability of the bipod. It's not a good bipod, really, by today's standards,
But it's at the other end.
Better than most, and it's in the right place. And then the lack of felt recoil, which means I can actually watch my sights. I don't have this shot. It just stays where you're shooting.
There is one other thing, and I feel like we haven't covered it, is the low bipod combined with just the right stock shape, because all of us, I think, pistol grip, opposite arm, grab the butt. The butt is a sort of triangular shape in your palm that you can squeeze up or let down, and you don't think about it, but you have a natural ability to pump up and pump down that thing And it gets you a lot when you have that shorter bipod because it pivots you up and down on that bipod smoothly, and you're able to just sort of like.
That probably was the most, if we're talking about laying prone with all these, that probably for me was the most comfortable gun to lay prone with.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
being behind the Lewis gun was
Everything.
extremely
Like, it
comfortable.
was.
All of them seem too tall to me. I mean,
Yes.
just the height on most of them, and I'm a large man with like upper body and everything, and especially when you get into like the U.S. Chauchat was the worst offender.
Yeah. The Madsen was not bad.
No, Madsen acceptable. Madsen's also extendable.
Yeah.
So that thing could be extended far enough out that you could take a seated position behind an object. We just didn't have any basis of comparison to do that.
I'd also argue the 0815 wasn't too bad, but it was still high, don't get me wrong, but that swoop in the bottom of the buttstock, like that really,
that
like,
concave
that
stock
just set it right into your shoulder. That
it
was
has
beautiful.
horizontal marks all up in it. That thing rests really well for its height.
Just
I will say
careful
that.
you don't have any pockets or like any way it can snag, because you put that gun down, it's going to snag it every time, I swear.
So weirdly, I felt pretty good about the 0815, probably right behind the Lewis at 100 yards, because I thought, oh yeah, when we get the total damage, 0815 is going to do a ton because it can swivel, it can do all these things. But then that dispersion that we saw on the 100-yard target has come back around to us, because having a tight group with an automatic weapon for this kind of burst firing thing is critical.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I would agree. Well, I think we have done some damage on this, haven't we?
Total damage.
Well, I think we need to just kick things down for a quick review and go over our final impressions for the entire series.
Fun.
All right, gang, that's our final test, but it is not the end of the series. And by the way, that series only exists due to the support from Brownells. That's right, they took on a chunk of the financial risk that really made this show almost impossible to do for a channel as small as ours. We had obviously Forgotten Weapons buying in, but it's no reason to sort of put everything on the line. And these guys got real excited about the opportunity and they dove on it and asked us for practically nothing. I'm saying what I'm saying now because I chose to say it. And so if you have a Rudy Tooty point and shooty of your own and you need something to help maintain it or maybe accessorize it, well, these are the guys to check out. And when you do, by all means, tell them that we sent you over there and that you appreciate them supporting gun history accessible to everyone who bothers to tune in. It's actually quite altruistic of them. Now, if you'd like to see the entire series with the final conclusion and the extra behind the scenes and stuff like that ahead of time, right now, you can still go over to C&Rsenal.com and get the whole series for $6. And honestly, you could also just do that to support the series, to say, yes, I want more of this kind of content, and yes, I want to put some piggies in the bank so that you and Forgotten Weapons can do this sort of thing again. Now, if you don't want to do any of that, that's perfectly fine. You're just going to have to tune in one more time for the conclusion over on Forgotten Weapons channel. All right, have a good one.